Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's RNL time here on RENNSPORT.gg, and with me today is nobody. It's just me. You may be thinking, where is the silky voice of Lino? He's not here. It's just my dulcet tones for the next 90 minutes of race car action here at the Nordschleife in GT3 cars. And what we're lacking a little bit in field, I'm sure we'll make up for in action. Right now, you can see the cars are qualifying. They've done most of a lap, so we're about halfway through the qualifying lap. They maybe get two done before the end of the qualifying session. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as they get towards the end of the lap. You can see a few cars on screen here, but they are all in their separate qualifying sessions. They're not against each other on track. Handily demonstrated there by the ghosting Porsche. Which takes a nasty hit into the wall, even with the Dazzle livery. Unfortunate. But yeah, the cars are qualifying on track right now and should be coming round, getting towards the small carousel before, as I said, setting off on a 90-minute GT3 race. Definitely going to be pit stops. There's definitely going to be mayhem. It's the Nordschleife. And it appears to be a BMW versus Porsche day, of all things. So it's Battle of the Germans. So, where is the season so far, you may well be asking? And that's a good question. So, if I bring up the standings, hopefully it will work. If I just move that out the way, it will look better. I didn't really need a transition for that. But yeah, the standings after the second round of the season, as you can see, are Dominic Ladler with 30 points. We've got Enrico Broinia at 24, Julian Sicko 18, Ali Zahir 14. Everyone else is currently at 0 points. A lot of catching up to do there, but there's plenty of places to be made up. And we've got a lot of these guys on track today, so the places should shuffle around a little bit more as this race continues. Next week, if I want to talk about next week's race already, not next week, the week after, is M2s on the Nordschleife. This is the Nordschleife series after all, which will be 60 minutes in the BMW M2, and the final week is going to be 2 hours of Nordschleife action. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. The GT3 races always seem to be a little bit more well populated, and hopefully that will carry on. Don't know why my view is stuck on Julian Sicko right now. Yeah. So that was the end of the qualifying session. That was why you stuck. As you can see, our pole sitter was Dominic Ladler, followed by Julian Sicko, Dennis Kurtz, Timothy Frisch, Thomas Frisch, oh, so fortunate, Enrico Breuninger, Ali Zahir, Rowan de Hood taking up the last spot on the field. I'm going to do a bit of free cam action because I can. That's it, flash some lights. Julian Sicko joining in there. I'll move the camera down a bit here. It might look cool as everyone sets off. But bear with me a little bit today, because not only have I got to talk to myself for 90 minutes, but I've also got to do all the cameras at the same time. So it's a bit overloaded for my old brain. Well, I'll try to do my best. Got Dominic Ladler down here as he comes to the light. Just coming up now. The race should be starting any second, and that would be a go. Dominic Ladler seems to get a fairly good start, maintaining his position from P1. He's on the outside right now, but it will go immediately to the inside for the next corner. Everyone else seems to be getting through fairly cleanly there. No, a little bit of spinning at the back there from Rowan de Hood, but nothing too bad. Ladler keeping it clean, making sure he cements his first position, which I'm sure he will be looking forward to holding. Just getting a bit of a light flash from Julian Sacco there, though. Sacco making a move into the inside, into the Dunlop hairpin, and Dominic Ladler not really putting up too much of a fight there and just letting him take the position and run with it. Although a little bit more friendly, light flashing backwards and forwards there. The rest of the field seems to be keeping fairly in order. Got Rowan still sitting up the back. Just where did Dennis? Oh, Dennis Kurtzer making some moves, I think. A few cars stacked up behind him, and then off into the grass goes Dennis Kurtzer. That's unfortunate for him. That should unleash Ali Zahir a little bit more, and he'll be keen to close up the gap up to Timothy Frisch ahead of him. So meanwhile, Dominic Ladler still sat in second place as we start to come through the first kind of sections of the Nordschleife proper. Got a car off here. It's Dennis Kurtzer. Looks like he's hit the wall, but he's got it moving. That's good. He's going to have to do a bit of an Austin Powers maneuver to get going, but he's finally off in the right direction again. And Dennis Kurtzer quitting back to the pits, unfortunately. Which doesn't... Early bath for Dennis Kurtzer, and I believe Ali Zahir has also opted for an early there's a word I'm looking for. Early retirement. So unfortunately we're 2 cars down on this first lap, but Julian Sacco looks like he's not looking to quit anytime soon, and he's happily leading the pack. With just a second gap to Dominic Ladler. 2 seconds behind them is Timothy Frisch, and then 4 seconds behind him is Enrico Bräuninger. A couple of seconds gap back to Rowan de Hood, and that is the end of our field right now. Rowan's Porsche looking a little bit battered after the incident at the beginning of the race, I think. It wasn't a spin, but it was a fairly big club into turn 2. It's definitely taken its toll on the front of his Porsche there. And once again, I curse people. I'm very good at commentators cursing people. I'm very sorry, Rowan. I said you hadn't spun, you immediately spun. You can blame me. Many people have before. You won't be the first, you won't be the last. Dominic Ladler pretty much maintaining his gap to Julian Sacco. He seems fairly happy to sit back there and not put too much pressure on the Frenchman. Oh, the Porsche is a lot louder. I was not expecting that to happen. So let's follow Enrico Breininger for a while. I won't curse you, I promise. I make no such promises. But he seems to be sat in a fairly decent position. He's a couple of seconds back from Timothy Frisch here, but there's no pressure on or around him with Rowan de Hood's unfortunate spin. Might be my fault. So he can settle down into a nice rhythm and just keep himself going. And wait for the pit stops and see what happens. It's a 90-minute race, so the cars will definitely be pitting today. Probably after the first 30 minutes or so. I haven't got a race timer on screen, so I can't tell you what race time it is right now. But I have got laps, so I'll have to go by that. So 30 minutes, if we say 4 laps-ish before they have to refuel. All the cars on a fixed setup and they all have the same starting fuel, so it should be roughly 4 laps before they have to pit. But and then we should maybe see a little bit of jostling in the order as the cars come in to do the pit stops, and a bit of an idea of what kind of strategies people are going to be taking, whether they're going to take a lot of fuel and go for a single stint for the last 60 minutes or not, if they're going to change tyres or not. Some people might go for a 2-stop strategy and just change tyres at a different time. There is a bit of variability people can go for. We've seen people do some strange strategies here in the RNL before, and I'm sure it won't be the last time. So we'll see what everyone decides to go for. But that won't be for another 25 minutes or so, 30 minutes. And a lot can happen in that time, as I'm sure you all know. Nice aerial shot of Julian Sacco coming down Dottinger here. The here. That's a strange thing to say. Dominic Ladler still just over a second behind him, maintaining the gap. He seems fairly comfortable in that kind of position. As Julian Sacco comes into Tiergarten for the first time. Nice and clean, as you'd expect from these guys. They know what they're doing. They've driven Nordschleife once or twice. They all know how to take Tiergarten, unlike me, who's terrible. And with a bit of a gap, they've got no pressure on themselves to do anything ridiculous. Just gonna swap the hood here for a second to show the in-car hood, just to get a look at the lap times as people come through. Julian Sacco doing a pretty impressive 8:18 from a rolling start. Dominic Ladler a couple of seconds behind, but his lap was valid. You can see he's got a best time there, which means that was a valid lap, whereas Julian Sacco's was not. So he will have picked up a couple of penalty points there, whereas Dominic Ladler will be on a clean sheet. Timothy Frisch coming through on an 8:28, and Enrico Breininger on an 8:32. Rowan de Hood's lap time, not that great, but he was having a bit of a bouncy wall time. Run the hood into the pits to fix up his car. It's looking a bit of a mess, so I can understand why he's wanting to do that. There we go. I'm a professional, I can do this. I'm not a professional, I really can't do this. But you see Rowan de Hood getting a bit far behind there with that fairly hefty repair time he had on his Porsche, but he's got a nice brand spanking new Porsche in Lino's favourite livery. And I'm sure we'll see him making some inroads into that gap as the race progresses. He's still got a hefty amount of time to make it up. And I'm sure he will be doing that. We'll watch Julian Secor for a while, see what's making him the front runner of the race as it is, as he takes some nice clean lines here, keeping his car steady and under control. His first lap time was pretty good, so he's managed to eke out a little bit more time from Dominic Ladler. It's just over 2 seconds now. But we don't know what kind of strategy these guys are planning on running. Dominic Ladler and Julian Secor have both got about 12 seconds on Timothy Frisch, who's currently 5 seconds ahead of Enrico Bräuninger. I'll keep you updated on Rowan de Hood, but right now it's a fairly hefty gap. We'll leave it at that. I think that's Dennis Kurtzer in chat right now. Can you give us a bit of a hint as to why you felt like quitting there, Dennis? You seem to be having a bit of a bad time hitting the wall. Let's see if he replies or not. I'm not sure. He might not be there anymore. Ladler's pulling a bit of time back on Julian Secor. He seems to be a bit quicker through that section, reducing the gap a little bit. Some of the drivers here probably aiming to take it a little bit safer on the first lap and make sure they get around nice and cleanly, and then slowly picking up the pace as they go on. Of course, fuel load comes into it. Fuel will reduce as they do lap after lap, which will lead to a slightly faster lap time, but of course counter to that you have tyre wear, where as the tyres wear the cars will become a little bit slower. So you might see the lap times fluctuating a little bit on top of just drivers making little driving mistakes. Ali's are here in chat as well now, I think. What happened to you, Ali? Can you give us a bit of an insight into what happened? You seem to have a bit of a car meets wall moment. Dominic Ladler further eating into the gap between him and Julian Secor. It's down to was down to a second and a half. Now it's 1.8. So it is a bit of a give or take depending on what section of the track they're on and which one the driver favours. They're both in the same car. Equal machinery, as some people like to say. Dennis Kurtz is saying he had some hardware issues in the beginning of the race, which made avoiding the wall a little bit tricky. Which I think we've all been there at one time or another in sim racing, so that makes a lot of sense. And Aliza here saying he wanted to get up the grid fast on lap 1 and was betrayed by the tyres. How dare you? You need to make those sacrifices to the tyre gods, Ali. Dominic Laddler dropped back a little bit on the final sector on the run up to Dottingham, so the gap's opened up a bit more to just over 2 seconds again. Bit too far to be getting any meaningful amount of tow, even on this massive straight. And into the pits they go. They're both pitting early here. Julian Sacco just refueling. Lost a couple of tenths on aligning to the box. Dominic Laddler, however, bang in the centre, no messing about for him. And we see third place coming into the pits as well there. So I'll have a quick swap to them. Enrico Breuninger and fourth place. Busy pit lane this lap. And Timothy Frisch getting out ahead of Enrico Breuninger there. I believe he was behind going in. No, he wasn't behind going into the pits. I am lying through my mouth. But they are very close together. I will get some more information on the screen. There we go. Dominic Laddler losing a bit of time, coming out around 3.5 seconds behind Julian Sacco. But we'll follow Timothy Frisch for a little bit. It's him and Enrico Breuninger having a bit of a tussle coming through the GP section of the track. Nothing too forceful yet from either party. Timothy Frisch seems to be holding off Enrico fairly successfully. Maybe just a little bit of a defensive line here and there, but he seems to have the speed to keep him at bay. Oh, I say as Enrico Breuninger goes hoofing down the inside. Maybe braking for the wrong chicane there, Timothy Frisch. Unleashing the BMW of Enrico Breuninger. Once again in Lino's favourite livery, but on the wrong car this time. I mean, Lino's favourite car is the Audi, so they're all on the wrong car for him. Got Enrico pulling out a 1 second lead fairly quickly. Just coming into one of the larger drafting sections of the track. He managed to get Timothy Frisch out of his draft, so he won't be gaining too much time back from that. And he seems to have cemented himself in third place pretty spectacularly there, I'd say. Well done, Enrico. Dominic Ladler dropped back a little bit after the pit stop to 3.5 seconds, but he's managed to hold that gap right now, so he's still not really losing much time over Julian Secor. Definitely in a position to make a race of it further down the line. As you saw from the pit stops, people took on fuel, but nobody really changed tyres yet. So the rubber will be wearing a little bit. But it's only the first 21 minutes of the race as we go into lap 3. I'm guessing these guys are going to be pushing a bit over 20 minutes, 90 minutes overall, 110 and 45 minutes, about an hour. I guess guessing somewhere around the hour mark people will go for another pit stop and probably change tyres. GT3 tyres tend to be able to last an hour comfortably, so it shouldn't be too taxing for them up until then, although they have got a bit more fuel on board than they would have done at the start of the race, so the lap times might come down a little bit, and it does affect the balance of your car, so the guys on track will have to get a bit more used to the slightly different handling characteristics. As we see Timothy Frisch there riding the wall, doing a NASCAR move in the background. Perhaps not advised with damage turned on. But it doesn't look too bad. His car seems to be in fairly clean condition after that. Because I get a bit nerdy about such random details, I'd really like a sim racing game to have grass in the radiator after somebody does things like that. I think it'd be cool, and I would like the look of it from a casting point of view. RENNSPORT when grass in radiator. Bit of a sketchy approach to the carousel there by Timothy Frisch, but he managed to navigate the carousel itself pretty well and fires himself off up the hill. Rowan de Hood is eating into the lap time of Timothy Frisch. He is making some time back. And hopefully after the other stops he will be a bit more back in contention. Thank you for carrying on though, Rowan. You're a long way back, and a lot of people, well, some people would have quit by now, and that's less good. Don't like it. It's always worth carrying on around for the points, especially in a championship like this. I'm sure it'll be good for him in the long run to carry on around and get some points. Always worth picking up points. Dominic Ladler closing the gap up a little bit to Julian Secor in the back third of that lap. Gap now back to 2.6 seconds. Oh no, it only shows me sectors 1, 2 and 3. That's a bit pointless. As Julian Sakar goes through to start lap 4 and down towards T1. Big braking zone. Not having to worry about anybody. He's got 2.5 seconds and Dominic Ladler. Dominic would never make a lunge that far. But Dominic does seem to be closing up a little bit here. The gap's come down to 2 seconds coming into the stadium section. And out onto the GP track. I'm really wishing I'd brought a drink already. The gap opening a bit more towards the end of the stadium, of the GP loop, which seemed to have happened pretty much every lap. I think it's just a bit of a driver preference for different sectors. The gap between them has been kind of seesawing a little bit here and there. Let's just have a check on Rowan de Herd. His car looks pretty clean. So he seems to have been keeping it on the grey part. And he's doing okay, so we'll look forward to seeing him a little bit more involved in the action towards the end of the race. But he's plugging on, chipping away at the time between him and Timothy Frisch. Enrico Bräuninger just going to Sabine Smith's curve there, I believe. And setting off onto the Nordschleife proper. Gap between Ladler and Sickard, carrying on the kind of concertina-ing that we've been seeing so far. It's closed up to 2.2 seconds now. I keep getting very confused when I look at the leaderboard, because it says Dennis Kurtzer is 3/10 behind Rowan de Herd, but he's not. Dennis Kurtzer has finished. I'm sure there's a hotkey to change that, but I can't remember what it is. That just turns the leaderboard on and off. Yeah, it does. That's entirely definitely not amateur mistake. It's Dominic Ladler pulling gap a little bit tighter, getting within the 2 second mark of Julian Sakar. Really looking to be closing the gap as they come up to the dot in the hole, where he can definitely use that straight line speed and the draft to try and close up the gap a little bit more. But he seems to have got a good run on the uphill section here, which lets you carry a lot of speed for a long time. So they're eating away tenths here and there as he works his way up the hill. Julian Sucre coming up towards the carousel. Smooth camera panning. Fantastic mouse skills at work there. Dominic Ladler absolutely on the bumper of Julian Sucre there. Julian making a bit of a mistake going wide onto the grass. Not quite close enough to strike, but Dominic Ladler is right on his tail now. Is he going to hang back there and wait for Dottinger and the guaranteed overtake, or is he going to try and make a move earlier? The danger there is if he does overtake Julian Sucre before the Dottinger and doesn't get enough of a gap, then Sucre gets the easy overtake of the Dottinger. So there is a little bit of a tactics battle here, and we have seen that Julian Sucre is fast in the latter sections of the track. So he may well pull that gap a little bit wider. But Ladler seems to be sticking with him now. He's got a bit of a draft, giving him a bit of a speed boost. Just got to make sure he doesn't forget about the dirty air. Can mess with your aerodynamics a little bit and make being close to another car just a little bit trickier than it was before. But he manages to be maintaining it pretty well here. Managing it, sorry. As they go around the small carousel and up the hill before the long drag of Dottinger. Ladler is in a good position here. He's closing up as they come onto the Dottinger, who are just running a little bit wide, maybe losing a little bit of speed. Julian Sucre weaving to try and break the draft. Ladler is catching. He's got a bit of overspeed, but not a lot right now. He's going to have to go to the outside under the Bilstein Bridge. But he seems to have got past fairly safely, and Julian Sucre slotting in behind him. See if he can pick up a bit of overspeed now. The dotting is so long you can sometimes make a comeback. But no, just backing out and letting Dominic Ladler through. Of course, now we have dragged down into turn 1, which is another prime overtaking position. If you have been overtaken on the Dottinger, you can make a bit of a comeback. But it doesn't look like he's close enough to have a go this lap. Ooh, tried for a bit of a dive on the inside of turn 2 there. It didn't quite pay off. Decided discretion was the better part of valor and wait for another corner. Now, on previous laps, Ladler has been fast around the GP section, so see if he manages to make a bit of a gap from Sucre. Sucre flashing his lights there, trying to maybe distract Dominic Ladler a little bit, but I don't think Ladler's going to get distracted that easily. The pace between these two cars is pretty even. They've been pretty much neck and neck all the way around. The gap has opened up to a couple of seconds and closed back up and opened up again. So these guys seem to be pretty evenly matched on pace. They have Julian Sacco making a bit of a dive down there as they come onto the Nürburgring proper through the Sabine Schmitz curve, but just deciding to back out. I think Dennis Kurtzer in chat might be right, is that this might come down to a spanner fight. Because these two are pretty neck and neck right now. Or Julian Sacco making a move again. He is hungry for this overtake, but can't quite make it stick. Gladly giving him all the space there, but unfortunately shoving him out into the outside through the S-bends. But Sacco is definitely not giving this one up. Oh dear. Apparently I'm a moderator on this Twitch chat, but I don't know how to delete things because I've never had to do it before. So I'm afraid I can't. Definitely don't want to pin it. And as I was messing around with Twitch chat, Julian Sacco's got past Dominic Latta and I missed the entire thing. But at least I had it on screen for you guys. I'm a professional. Julian Sacco trying his best to make a getaway here, pulling a second gap up from Dominic Ladler, so Ladler can't just immediately come back. But we're now 38 minutes into the race, which normally would be around the halfway mark. But for this 90-minute race, they've still got quite a way to go. Yeah. Other people clearly know how to moderate Twitch chat better than me. I could figure out how to ban him, but I wanted to delete the message and I couldn't figure out how to do that. Maybe it was too Discord-brained of me. Ladler not giving up the fight here as he pulls the gap way back on Julian Sacco. It seemed to get a bit of an awful exit from the last corner. It's pulled way back to 0.3 seconds. He's right on Julian Sacco's bumper. as they go through YouTube corner. Nobody being on any YouTube compilation from those, as they both take it incredibly cleanly, as you'd expect. I will dare to look away from this battle for a little minute, and we'll just watch Enrico Breininger take a few corners. As he's 45 seconds down, as you can see from the leaders, but he's still got a race to run, and he's doing pretty well. He's managed to gain, quick head math, 13 seconds on Timothy Frischt. So he's got a bit of a gap, but as I keep saying, it's only 40 minutes into the race. There is another 50 to go. Oh, yikes. So, so he's got plenty of time to try and make a comeback. And he's got a couple of pit stops to go and all kinds of manner of things like that. It's the Nordschleife. Things can go haywire at any minute. I will pop over to the Dottinger, where Dominic Ladler has now got back ahead of Julian Secor, which I missed this time. I do apologise. Coming down into Tiergarten, Julian Secor thinking about it, but resisting a dive. Little touch of the wall there as he exited it to finish the lap, which will slow him down maybe a touch too much to try and make a move into T1. Julian Secor taking a bit of a different line through T1 and 2 than Dominic Ladler, and it does put him back a little bit as far as being able to get on the power is concerned. But it seems to work for him. He's managed to close the gap up a little more. 0.7 seconds behind Dominic Ladler. Oh, and that's unfortunate drift, just pushing a little too hard through the Dunlop hairpin. Managed to get it turned around. No damage on that car, but the tyres will be a little hot for the next few corners. And that has given Dominic Ladler 9 seconds of breathing room, which is unfortunate in a battle that's been taking place for the last 4 laps between the two of them. But I'm sure Julian will be back on pace pretty rapidly and pushing to close that gap. It's got a little touch of damage to the front left of his car, maybe from that tap of the barrier as he came out of the last turn onto the start-finish straight. But it's probably not worth fixing. Dominic Ladler with a bit less pressure on his shoulders now can maybe try relaxing, get back into a nice rhythm without having to look in his rearview mirrors all the time. Always good when you're driving. There's only so much mental power you've got, and you can't be concentrating too much on your lines and throttle brake application as well as looking behind you and trying to judge whether someone's going to make a move. So he can maybe just relax a little bit and settle himself back into a rhythm. That's Dennis Kurtz that I wanted to go to. Oh, Rowan de Herd coming back in the pits. He's taken a bit of damage again, so he must have been meeting barrier. But he takes on board some fuel. Is he going to... No, it seems to be just... Oh, he has had a bit of a repair. And off he goes again. A little weave to try and get the tyres back up to temperature. And off he goes. Timothy Frisch still about 12 seconds behind Enrico Bräuninger. These guys seem to be doing a pretty much the same pace. So it's unfortunate that they're 12 seconds ahead given the pace similarity. It would have been another good fight on the go there. But there's a long way, and the tyres will start to feel a bit squirrely now. They've been going for 45 minutes lapping around here pretty hard. So they're maybe going to be thinking about popping in for a pit stop, picking up a bit of fuel and a tyre change. Looks like Timothy Frisch's car is missing a panel, but I think that's just a graphical glitch. I don't think an entire panel has fallen off. I'll try swapping to someone else. And then maybe swap back later and see if it's still missing. The gap between Julian Sacco and Dominic Ladler sticking at kind of the high 8 seconds since Julian Sacco had his incident. So it seems to be business as usual for those two guys, but just a little bit further apart. Neither one is making significant inroads into the gap, either extending it or shrinking it. The gap between Sacco and Enrico Bräuninger is slowly growing as the laps go on, but I think more importantly, the gap between Bräuninger and Timothy Frisch is staying fairly consistent. We'll see how those guys manage with the wearing tyres and see if one of them can handle it a little better than the other, and if that has an effect on the gap. Roan de Hood, unfortunately having a game crash by what he's telling me in chat. I can no longer see him on track. It goes straight to Dennis Kurtzer. 7, 6. Yeah, so that's an unfortunate one for Rowan. It seems to be a day for hardware failures between you and Dennis Kurtzer. I always try to think of hardware failures when I'm sim racing as like the mechanical things that you don't in endurance races that just end a race. It's all part of the thing in my head that helps me feel a little bit better about them. Like, oh, I don't know, maybe my gearbox blew up. I have had my fair share of computer-based forced retirements in endurance races, and That's just how I like to cope with it personally. Dominic Ladler stretching the gap out 13 seconds now. He seems to have really got the hammer down. Or Julian Sacco is having a bit of a problem with dealing with the worn tyres. Maybe Julian used his tyres up a little bit more at the beginning of the race, staying ahead. I don't know. Tyre management is a bit of a black art. It's not always something that's obvious, but it definitely starts to come into play in races like this that are 90 minutes long. Well, I said it's a 90-minute race long enough. Do you understand that? But seeing as we've got a little lull in the action, I'm going to queue up a little trailer which Lena gave me before he disappeared. So you can watch a bit of that. And welcome back. That was the trailer for the community event which is running this weekend, which will be the Mission R Porsche at Jeddah. I believe it's 2 shorter races, but the Mission R is one of the free cars this week, so you can take advantage of that. Have a little spin around in an electric car, which goes crazy fast. Not me, I hate driving electric cars. But I'll be casting anyway, so it doesn't matter. But anybody can take part in that. It's completely free to join. It's a free car, so anybody with an account is welcome on track. Back in this race, which is going on right now, Dominic Ladder is continuing to open the gap up from Julian Sacco. It's up to 16 seconds now. So he's gained another 4-ish seconds in the first half of this lap. This is lap 7. The gap between Enrico Bräuninger and Timothy Fritsch still sticking up pretty much bang on 12 seconds. Unfortunately, Rowan de Herd and Dennis Kurtz are having technical issues, and Ali Zahir getting a bit heavy with his right foot in the first lap as he tried to make a tactical overtake. He kind of tried to what do you call it, brain fail again. No, he'll come back to me. Oh, Julian Sacco hitting the wall there. Did seem to have a little bit of damage on the front of his BMW. I think he's maybe been pushing it a bit too hard, trying to catch up with Dominic Ladler. And if he doesn't watch it, he's going to be stiffed with a fairly decent repair bill when he comes into the pits. And the last thing he wants to do right now is probably fall back into the clutches of Enrico Bräuninger and Timothy Fritsch. Which, if he does get into a position where he's battling with Enrico Bräuninger, it could mean Timothy Fritsch catching up and becoming a three-way fight for second place. Great for me, not so great for Julian Secor. It's Lino in chat. How dare you come in to torment me? I'm not entirely sure how to get you in from here. In fact, I think it would work if you really wanted to join in, you could join in. That is entirely up to you. I can tell you all about the fact that this is a 90-minute race. I've never mentioned that on this cast. The gap between Julian Secor and Enrico Bräuninger, 30 seconds right now, which that's within the scope of a decent repair time. So it may well, after a pit stop, be close together.
You don't have permissions?
I don't have I can't see that channel until you drag me into it, no.
Put that onto my fix list. So, I'm back. I just jumped in the stream here and there, so I have a rough idea of what happened.
You missed a fantastic fight between Dominic Ladler and Julian Secor for about 3-4 laps. They were battling side by side. It was a really good fight and fantastic to see. But then Julian Secor just had a bit of an overcooking it into the Dunlop hairpin and has had a few close rendezvous with the wall, shall we say, since then.
I mean, you just said it on stream. There's still a long way to go, and the 30 seconds are roundabout correct for repair, depending on if you do tires. If you don't do tires, if the suspension is damaged, which is likely in that scenario.
Yeah.
And it will bring him back between Bräuninger and Fritsch, and those two are fairly close together after 60 minutes of driving. And here, Julian Secor also in the pits. So, yeah, it will be, I think, an interesting last third to the race, nonetheless, for P2 to P4.
The Fritsch-Bräuninger gap has been fairly stable at about 12 seconds for most of the race. It's come down to 7 in the last few sectors, which is interesting. But yeah, we've got Julian Secor in here, probably in for a bit of a lengthy time. He'll be able to see Enrico Bräuninger coming past now. Timothy Fritsch carrying on.
Yeah, I've heard it's a two-stopper race, this one.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah,
still
this is the
waiting.
driver's second stop right now. But Julian Sakura back off the jacks. Oh, Enrico Breuninger right behind him. Dennis Kurtz said, glad to have Lino back on the cast. And to stop hearing me say it's a 90-minute race every 10 minutes.
It's important. I mean, there are series that do a summary of the race every half an hour in a 24-hour race. So
That's true.
but this looks so far to be a very good race for Dominic Gladlagen, who so far this season has always shined through consistency, and this race seems to be no different. I mean, it will definitely extend his points lead, and this race, of course, will have bonus points, isn't it?
Yes, I'd entirely forgot to mention that. Very true. Anyone getting past the halfway mark will get bonus points. So Ronda Hood unfortunately had to bow out due to a technical issue, but he might still get bonus points.
It should be 6 laps. It's about 50 minutes of run time.
Yeah.
I will check that, but it should give him the bonus point, which will move him up in the standings.
Just following Enrico Breuninger for a minute, seeing if a bit of a battle develops between him and Julian Sakura. The gap's staying fairly consistent at a second and a half right now.
I'm very curious whether Timothy Fritsch now on a lighter car compared to Enrico Breuninger and Julian Chico can undercut them.
Yeah, he did seem to be catching up on Enrico Breuninger fairly quickly.
And he has done some fuel mileage wins in the past, so it's in RCL, especially the last one he did. And also, if we think back to Hockenheim, that was also fuel mileage where he undercut a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think he still has some lap more to go after this one.
Okay. That's fairly impressive.
I'm having a look at how he's driving the car, and he's super conservative with the fuel, and yet he is on the pace to match Enrico Breuninger, or even surpass him in terms of pace. He's doing a lot of lift and coast. He's not revving the gears up to the highest point, unlike I do in my private car.
It's a Civic. What are you going to do?
It's the law. Guess why I bought one with actual VTEC. Yes, it drinks oil, but can buy oil.
Enrico Breuninger right up behind Julian Sakura here. It's closed the gap up. It's opened up a little bit more as they came out through the last section of corners. There's a better word for that, but I can't think. Sequence of corners.
Complex of turns.
Yeah. But it could be on for the old Dottinger overtake if he manages to keep closing off.
If we think back 2 weeks to Julian Chico in an M4 and to the Dottinger Höhe, even though not Enrico Breuninger, but rather Alizar here, you remember one of the smartest moves we've ever seen in RENNSPORT. Will he repeat that?
That is true.
But that was also on the last lap.
It was on the last lap, which is kind of the time you want to try to take care to try that kind of move. He had a few Dottinger battles with Dominic Ladler. He even tried to kind of make a comeback when Ladler overtook him on Dottinger fairly early. So it was he's definitely experienced in the Dottinger Höhe maneuvers.
On the other hand, Enrico's holding up the flag for FDRT, which of course yesterday had their main race, which was also broadcasted on YouTube, which I think was a great thing to see. So if you like those, and Timothy Fritsch having a huge off in Mood Kurve. He's rolling again, but there's a lot of damage to the car, and that will change things.
Yeah, that's not what he was going for, is it? With his undercutting. If that's what he was going for, that might have just scuppered his chances of that.
I mean, it doesn't seem to be as badly damaged as that he can't continue, but it will definitely put him a long way behind the two BMWs by the time he comes to the pits. Yeah. And he definitely has to watch out to not put further damage on that car. I mean, interestingly enough, it mainly affected Porsches, where we've seen this phenomenon, where you had damage early in the lap and had to carry through at snail pace. If you think back to Ali Zaya in round 1, I think there was another Porsche.
Yeah, I think you're right there. But yeah, I think to drive a damaged car on the Nordschleife is definitely not easy, and you can end up having to do it for quite a long distance. And it really does cost you a lot of time. As he takes a bit of a shortcut there.
I mean, on the other hand, we may repeat it. It's a 90-minute race. There's still 23 minutes left to go, so that's 3 laps. And I mean, both of his challengers in the form of Julian Chicot and Enrico Breuninger have made mistakes in this race and the last GT3 race around here. It's not that they aren't safe from it.
No, they are very close together, and that puts them under pressure, which maybe increases their chances of making mistakes. Timothy Fritsch just not being able to hold it there, and around he goes.
Yeah, I think there's damage to the rear left axle of the car, which makes it pretty much undrivable.
Oh, and he's having to let the pair chasing him through before he can get back on track.
But that's how you should do it.
Yep.
Don't reverse into traffic.
No, that was definitely great driving by Timothy Fritsch to let them through, but it also slightly heartbreaking for him.
I mean, we know him at this point. We know that he doesn't give up. So
yeah,
I'm sure we will see him back for the next one. Next one in 2 weeks being the BMW M2. We had some fun with the M2 today.
We did.
We did.
On this track.
On this track.
Even
though to varying success.
Yeah, I did not have a lot of fun on this track with the M2, but that was not the car's fault.
Well, I had a lot of fun with Mark fighting for...
Enrico Breuninger making a fantastic move on Julian Chicot there, just after the Bilstein Bridge. See if he can...
The toe was enormous. The speed difference 15 kph at the point of passing. You really timed it right. You really need those 6/10 at the entry to Döttinger Höhe to be in that optimal slipstream range. So you can just fly by. I don't think this fight is over, though.
No. From earlier on in the race, Julian Chicot was not giving up whenever Dominic Gladler passed him. He's definitely a fighter. And you can see he's already right up behind Enrico Breuninger, flashing the lights.
Timothy Fritsch found his way into the pits. Even though it was a bit close on accident, you can actually... I could see from a different angle that the rear left tire has massive toe out, which explains the grabbing to the left-hand side. And it's a hefty repair by about a minute in pit stop time. And Enrico Breuninger trying rally crossing.
Yeah, that was an interesting line through there. But he managed to hold it, so more power to him, I guess. You'll have picked up a few incident points, no doubt.
It's funny because Etienne actually today, of course, said while we were driving the M2s that you can probably rally them because they are this high. Now Enrico
He did.
Bräuninger showing us that you can do it with an M4 GT3 as well.
It's all about skills. The only thing missing from our M2, I think, is the handbrake. If we had a handbrake on there, it'd be definitely doable.
Doesn't CS Racing have a handbrake in real life, though? Not sure.
I don't know, but I don't think any of the cars do in game.
No, that of course, but I also don't think we feature a car that actually has a handbrake.
No.
Because on the regular M2, of course, it's an electric handbrake.
Yeah.
And on the M2 CS Racing, I don't think they will use the same calipers.
No, probably
I think they
not.
have a more sophisticated braking system. I'm not sure on this, so if I'm wrong, please correct me, but I don't think it has. Of course, GT3s and GT4s don't have a handbrake.
No, I doubt hypercars do.
Hypercars very much don't, yeah.
Touring cars, maybe?
No, they also don't have one. That was actually a funny exploit because in some games where you can assign a handbrake, you could use handbrakes in cars that, of course, didn't have a handbrake, just as the TCR cars.
Yeah.
Which led to them being a few seconds faster on some tracks than the real-life counterparts just because of the handbrake.
Alright, okay.
The WTCC cars from, like, the, what was it, Super 2000s era?
Yeah.
Or was it Super Touring? No, Super Touring was before, but then... Was it Super 2000? Something like that. They may have a handbrake, but they also have only, like, sequential shifters and stuff.
Yeah.
So, they may have it.
I have a sequential shifter on my sim rig, and I take great pleasure in using it whenever I'm driving a TCR. It is very clunky and tactile. Oh, Julian Sakar thought he was going to make a cheeky go for it there, but he decided to just back out. But he is hounding Enrico Bräuninger.
Matthew Fridge, of course, now on track. Further down the order, but even if he finishes P4, it will be very good for his championship.
Yeah, it's all points in the bank. And it's better to have points than not have points, obviously.
Well, this makes sense. Meanwhile, I will double check to see for how long One and Hood was actually in the race.
I can't honestly remember what lap it was that he had to bow out by.
Definitely made half distance by just a few seconds.
Ooh, close.
This is not no, actually a bit more. So he's definitely getting the bonus point for completing half the distance.
Enrico Bräuninger seemed to have had a fairly good run in the last couple of sectors because he's pulled out a little bit of a gap again. as they make their way past YouTube corner. Julian Sacco using all of the track there, getting well over to the side. And now beginning the last... Is this Whipperman? This bit's Whipperman, isn't it? Or is Whipperman earlier on?
The Whipperman is earlier.
Right.
I mean the one after Flansgarten, so after the small jump.
Yes. Well, we're just... Yeah.
That is just part of Flansgarten. Whipperman is actually the first complex after Hohe Acht, so the first right, left, right downhill.
Right, okay. I can never remember that part.
Well, let's just say it's also not that easy to remember, in all honesty.
I know some of the corner names, but... And for some reason, Whipperman always sticks in my head, but I can never remember which part it is.
Well, it's the left, right, left before Hedwigshöhe, which is also left, right, left, and it's pretty much the same, just early, just later.
Julian Sacco not quite getting enough toe to make a move on Enrico Breuninger this lap.
It's important that he sticks with Enrico, because he
Yeah.
still has 2 laps to go. What I'm a bit curious about is Timothy Fritsch, even though he went to the pits, seems to be a bit tight on fuel for my liking. I mean, he would have probably made it, or does make it, with the fuel saving he does. But I can't help but think that it will be a bit tight in the end on fuel.
Well, he's not like, unfortunately for him, he's not fighting for contention, so if he has to do it a quick stop and go, splash and dash type stop, just to put an extra bit in for the last lap, then it's not the end of the world for him. He'll still get the same amount of points, he'll still get the bonus points for going past halfway and finishing the race. But we'll have to keep an eye on him.
I'm just having a look at the points table in general. Timothy Fritsch currently 5th in the standings on 1 point, unfortunately, just, but that one came in round 1. So for him, this would still bring him close to Alizaya. It would pretty much decide that Dominic Ladler, Breuninger, and Chico are going in for the championship hunt. Because the gap will be a bit too big to the cars behind. So the podium is a bit out of reach unless something bigger happens in the next races. Who knows, maybe.
It's going to be a big change, I think, doing the M2 in 2 weeks' time. It's a very different car to drive than any of these GT3s. So it might throw a bit of a spanner in the works for some drivers and maybe give people a bit of a boost if they're more comfortable driving that than they are with the GT3s. But we'll have to see about that in 2 weeks, I guess.
Yeah, in 2 weeks. And we've seen it with RCL, which is, of course, back next week. We had a huge split there, and Maximilian Dehn in that championship, which has a very, very similar point system to this one, so it's actually comparable. After 1 race, has 34 points to his name. Dominik Ladler, after 2 races in the Nordschleife League, 33.
Yeah, that's true.
The points comes down to the participation numbers and stuff.
That's what I was gonna say.
I stole your show. And actually, Timothy Fritsch is in the pits to review.
He must have heard you.
Maybe. Maybe not.
Julian Sakot just starting to lose contact with Enrico Breininger here a little bit. The gap's opened up to a couple of seconds.
Actually, wondering, I've seen a yellow in around Dominic Ladler short moment before.
Let's see if we can
There
have a look
seems
at
to be
his...
nothing wrong with him or his car, so
No, it
either a
seems
small
to...
off track or
Maybe, yeah. Or something else happened, but either way, he seems to be carrying on pretty much as normal. Not watched Dominic Ladler for a while, so we'll pay attention to him for a little bit. He is winning after all.
but it's the curse of leading with this margin, right? It's
That is true.
everybody knows you're on top, but you don't get shown. So bad for sponsoring.
But he's lived up to his consistency moniker here today. He's just seems to have been doing lap after lap after lap at a fairly standard pace, for him at least, and comfortably taking it all in his stride. He had a bit of a battle with Julian Sakho, like I was saying earlier. And I thought for a while Sakho was going to make a getaway, but Ladler managed to reel him in and just sit there and wait for the opportunities.
Now I'm looking at the timing sheet right now, and Dominic Ladler's best lap time is an 8:14.007. And I think I've seen that exact lap time from Etienne in recent days somewhere. I may be mistaken with the minute, but 14.007 sounds familiar. Julian Chicot on an 8:16. Enrico Breininger 8:21. Timothy Fritsch 8:24.
So at least on paper, Julian Sakho is faster than Enrico Breininger.
Just watch Julian Chicot going through mood curve, and yeah, it definitely looks like he's going faster, but he's risking it more. I think he's sliding more, especially through the bumpier sections like Klostata. He's really letting the rear step out, which in short term can maybe gain you a bit, but in the long term will hurt your tires still and maybe put you at a disadvantage. But he of course now has to give everything to get back into slipstream range for Jettinger Höhe.
Yeah, he really needs to be in that kind of range to pull a bit of a Dottinger Höhe overtake and try and maximise it through the GP track following that and try and get himself a bit of a gap. Which he seemed to be pretty good at with Dominic Ladler, but Ladler was just like the mummy in a horror film, just kind of like slowly, just seemed to be constantly catching up to him, no matter how fast Julian Chicot tried to get away.
Did you ever notice that if you have a nightmare or something, where something is following you or hunting you down, they never catch you? But they also never fade away?
Yeah, he's getting a little bit squirrely, isn't he, coming out of the corners?
Maybe Julian Chicot will be Enrico Breininger's nightmare. But maybe not.
Maybe. For those old people like me who remember playing Resident Evil Nemesis.
I haven't even played any Resident Evil.
You've never played a Resident Evil game, Lena? That's disgusting.
No, I didn't. It's not the type of game I really engaged with in the past, nor the present, and unlikely in the future. But you have to understand, my life basically, in terms of gaming, consisted of two types: racing games Of course, I mean, I'm sitting here talking about cars going in a circle on a computer. Would be dumb if not. And Minecraft. Those were pretty much my games. Okay, and some other car-related games, perhaps. And what I discovered, I think, 2 years ago now, let me double check that. A genre which I never thought I would like. I mean, you probably know. It's Doom.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. I've seen you playing Doom a lot of times off stream.
So this one. But the thing is, I think it's a bit of a outside game for me because I never really enjoyed shooters that much, even though I played some shooters, of course, but it
Yeah.
wasn't like I got addicted to them or was like, oh yeah, I want to play a shooter, like sometimes, but not often. Because even if I was for sale, I was like, okay, I'm gonna sit in a car and drive around the Nordschleife.
As an indication of the age difference between me and Lena, I can remember the original 2D Doom and it coming out.
Oh yeah, that one I played as well later on then, but I was not good at it. I think if you were given control of that, you would be like, oh yeah, this feels familiar, and I'm like, dude, what the fuck? I can't look up and down. I mean, it's a great game.
You don't have to because there isn't anything up or down.
There is, but it has auto aim for that. Actually,
yeah. It pretends to be three-dimensional, but it's kind of not.
Yeah, it is not. But yeah. I still, even though you are a bit older than me, and the other way around, I'm younger than you, I still grew up playing with the Super Nintendo, so I know this 3D trick from like the likes of Super Mario Kart back then.
Yeah.
A game I really loved, which always gives me a lot of nostalgia, is F-Zero, the original one.
Oh wow.
That one I used to play a lot. And I still really like it, actually. If I had to pick it up, I think you would have me playing for quite a while. Only a bummer it didn't have multiplayer, but can't get everything.
Often thought of going back to the Toka touring car games, which I played a lot on a PlayStation. Arguably my first ever sim peripheral was I bought a dual shock pad which had sticks, which was a thing that was new and fancy back then, just so I could play Toka touring car better.
I remember my cousin had DTM Experience 2013, which was when I was 11 years old. And he had like a PlayStation controller from, I mean, it is part of Raysum basically. And you could buy it from Simbim back then. It was basically a PlayStation 3 controller, but instead of two sticks, it had like a steering wheel in the middle, which you could turn. And looking back at it, it's super weird, but I was so excited to try it. And it controls not greatly. A stick is better than that. But for a kid, this is cool. Because you actually have like, oh, I have a steering wheel, and you somehow steer it with your thumb. It is weird. And then I see like reels on Instagram where people buy like a contraption for a PlayStation 4 or 5 controller where they can do the same thing with it.
Yes,
and I'm like, yeah, this exists, mate.
You can get them like 3D printed things, or you can buy them and it like clicks onto your controller, so there's a wheel that just moves the stick.
Yeah. This is kind of odd. I'm not gonna lie.
But just to clarify, you were 11 in 2013.
Yes.
That means...
I was indeed born in 2002.
Which is the year I got married.
What the fuck? Enrico, meanwhile, has built up a gap of 7 seconds. Oh, and Dominic Ladler brushed the wall through Mood Kurve. There's some damage to the right-hand side of the car, but I don't think there's much he has to worry about. Because the clock is ticking down, this will be the final lap. Just looks a bit squished. Now on the front right.
Oop. As I swapped to him there, none of the scenery loaded in, so it looked very strange. But yeah, he seems to be going okay. I'm sure he'll be fine. We have passed the 90-minute mark, so this will be the last lap.
But maybe coming back to round off the topic, I grew up with the Super Nintendo and the old brick Game Boy. And a
Yes.
lot of that stuff, because of course I had it from my parents. My sister's a bit older than me, so from her. And at some point we got a PlayStation 2 when it was still quite new.
Okay.
And the Slim that was, which came out later. And a game that I got from a friend, basically, which I tried on, then my parents bought it for me, was Gran Turismo 4. And that was my childhood game. That was the game I sank hundreds, if not thousands of hours in. And that pretty much shaped a lot. I mean, it didn't make me into a car guy, I was this before already, but this really intensified it. I mean, having access to so many cars, tracks, racing legacy, it's of course awesome. But yeah, I sometimes wish I would have experienced the games like Toka and those gems of the early 2000s when I was a bit older. I would give a lot to just play Need for Speed Underground 1 for the first time again. Oh, and Julian Chicot, big hit into the wall. I think that sealed his
Yeah,
chances.
that's pretty much cemented his place in third here. I don't think he'll be making that kind of gap up unless Enrico Breuninger does something wrong, which I really hope he doesn't, because I've said it now.
And he has to be careful. Look at how the car's grabbing. And if he hits a wall at too much speed and a wrong angle, this could still be a DNF.
Yeah.
I mean, he has all the time he needs. Can take it slowly, but it is super dangerous to drive a front engine rear-wheel drive car that has damage on the rear right to this extent.
Yeah, it's visibly crabbing, isn't it? Down the straights. But I think the damage settings are set so that if you lose a wheel, you get DNF, don't you?
Yes, indeed. As soon as your car is deemed undrivable. This may change in the future, but I mean, with 3 wheels, you won't make it to the finish line
No.
in the next 5 minutes from this point on, so it wouldn't really change much. Trust me, I've driven with 3 wheels. Let's say there have been extensive damage tests in the past.
Are you talking about real life or in game?
Of course, both, because we had to crash about 500 BMW M4 GT3s to have a reference for the
That's
crash
very
physics
true, yeah.
in RENNSPORT.
Unfortunately, I joined the company after that had been done, so I didn't get to crash any of the very expensive GT3 cars.
And while talking about crash testing, we completely missed that Dominic Lala has already crossed the finish line and, of course, has won this race. I think it's the third straight
I'm a
this
professional.
championship. Professional. So, congratulations, big congratulations to Dominic Lala collecting another. This is then 17 points for this round with the 2 bonus points. Enrico Bräuniger coming across the line next. He will pick up 13 plus 2 means 15 to his name.
Well done. Julian Sacco crabbing his way down the Dottinger Hoe right now. Just got a couple of corners. Just take it easy. Don't do anything stupid. Oh. I thought he was going to try and take out that BMW M banner then for a while. But it gets through nice and cleanly. And onto the finishing straight. Don't do too much weaving, Julian. Don't do it. He manages to make it across the line. I had to hold my breath for a second there.
Yeah, very much so indeed. It was a tense situation. Fortunately, it did run off him.
and Timothy Fretched gallantly carrying on despite the damage and the long pit stops, which I will always thank people for doing. Thank you very much, even though it's worth it for yourself in points.
So I'm updating the standings accordingly, because we are still waiting for Timothy Fritsch to come into the finish line.
He goes around a little bit more. I'm just going to bring up the RENNSPORT Community League schedule, because why not?
That's a good thing, because next week we'll be going back to the Nürburgring, even though not the Nordschleife, but the GP track, which we haven't visited in quite a while, if I recall that right. Of course, there was the FDRT race yesterday,
Yeah,
but with our official competitions, we haven't really visited them in quite a while, which I think long overdue. I know there are people who don't quite like Nürburgring GP and Fortune. I love it, and it will come back because I love it.
I will try to swap camera because that is very loud.
Need to get used to that. But yeah, I really like it. Of course, this won't be like the only thing we got, in theory at least, because we will also have a race tomorrow.
Yes. Yes, I've shown the trailer. I've done it, boss. For the community event tomorrow.
I'm very proud of you.
For the mission R. I believe it's 2 races, isn't it? 2 shorter races.
It is 2 25-minute races. There's an info sheet in the Discord. And yeah, it's, I think, an interesting concept we have there, because we will drive one race at noon and one at night. Of course, on Jeddah, it kind of never is night.
No,
In
that's
a way.
true.
But I still think it will be interesting to see the differences. I mean, we've had races at Jeddah at night, we've had races at day, but we never really combined those. I don't even think we had a transitioning race. So yeah, I think it will be interesting to have a direct comparison for once. I think it's the most interesting track when it comes to the day-night cycle. I think we had one community race where the lights came on during the race, and it kind of flashbanged a lot of people because they are very, very bright.
They are, yeah. Those F1 cars, they don't have headlights. They need a lot of lighting.
Because the track is always but yeah, the standings now: Dominic Ladler on 49 points, Enrico Breuninger on 40, and Julian Chico on 31. We have 2 more races left to go. The next one will be with the BMW M2 for a 60-minute race back to the basics, basically, in 2 weeks. I think that one will be quite exciting to watch, especially at the start with those M2s. And the last one will be our season finisher, 120 minutes. We had a 120-minute race before in the Founders League. I think it was a pretty interesting race, because that was the one where we had huge offsets in strategy. Of course, it wasn't the most racing action, but in terms of strategy, it was very interesting. So I'm looking forward to see what will change now with damage and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think is this the first time I've done the M2s at the Nordschleife with damage on?
Today.
To date. I mean, no, not today, for the Nordschleife race in the M2s in 2 weeks.
No, there have been races on the schedule, the 3-lap races.
Oh, yes.
So you were able to experience that before.
I meant in a leaguey way. I think it's
No,
the
no,
first.
that is the first time, but it's also the first time the M2 is actually featured in the Nordschleife
Yeah,
League. So, yeah, I think it's hard to really compare that.
but yeah, I think that's pretty much everything for today. Ending is hard. Have you got anything you want to add, Lena?
Well, I thank you all for joining today's. No, wait, that's the wrong script again. Um,
Oh no, that's the wrong one.
so
Blank screen is the one I wanted.
thanks for joining today. I hope you liked being on board with Tim for tonight instead of me. Might be a nice change in voice.
No,
And
no, it
to
wasn't.
not for you maybe, but for the viewers, I think they won't have done too bad. But yeah, I'd say we see each other tomorrow back in the classic duo.
Yep.
Until then, there's still WEC to watch if you want some entertainment.
That's true. And I think for me, it's goodbye.
Indeed. Goodbye.
I thought I'd play the community event trailer again.